Welcome back to Foundations, a podcast where we explore self-worth, confidence, and emotional mastery, building a life rooted in purpose. I'm your host, Fiza Pasha, a confidence and emotional mastery coach and the founder of Brule Beauty. And I'm joined by Alia Khafajy, who is the founder and CEO of Okta, that is a destination for clean, conscious beauty and wellness. I'm really excited about this episode because we're going to dive into a lot of personal incidents that we've both been through that have led us to have more confidence in life, and what the beauty industry is missing, and stuff and how we plan on making a change for the industry. So let's dive in. We're going to have a chat about just a few things about being a founder, being a woman, confidence, power, what it all means to you. And what I love about you, I mean, we met, last year, the year before, is this quiet confidence that you have, which I really like telling people about. Is this feminine, you don't need to be super masculine to be confident or to run a business. And I feel like a lot of people now, like women especially, they try to emulate men in a way. They're like, oh yeah, we're super masculine and we're super powerful, but I see women like you and I'm like, okay, well, you can be powerful without the whole masculine and really loud sort of thing. So
it's funny you say that, because I actually always feel, or still feel, that a lot of the times in my day-to-day I actually still play a bit of a masculine role, or sometimes in certain dynamics that I have within family members, or if it's my dad, I don't feel like I'm in my, I don't know, feminine energy or say. So it's interesting to hear, because I'm told, or I hear that, oh, you're so soft and you have it. Really? Because in my mind, it's not what I feel is happening. But
but that's how you come across. So that's great.
Thanks.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Exactly. So tell me, you've built a really cool space for clean beauty, and you're a real advocate of that. What started that journey? What was your inspiration, and what has been sort of the milestones in that journey?
I think it wasn't a very intentional journey at first to begin with, to be very honest. So my own personal journey with why I wanted, or why I have this gravitation towards clean beauties, because personally for me, I have super sensitive skin. Every single time I would use something, I would get an adverse reaction. French pharma, and back then there wasn't. There was either, your masstige brands or French pharma brands. And everything was either too harsh or it caused something. So that's from a personal aspect. But in terms of how it kind of happened was, I think it was just universe milestones, really, where I was in a transitional phase where I had started something on the back end of what I was doing when I stepped into the family business, and there was this concept that was there that I wanted to change into kind of having more of a wellness space, so to speak, but I felt it was a little bit too advanced at that point for the concept I wanted to have in mind. And then there was just a change of direction where it kind of focused more on beauty. And then, I mean, partnership, and then dissolve, and then, standing back on 2 feet again and all of that. So that's where we are today with Okta.
Nice. And tell me, what does power mean to you as a woman?
So as you mentioned before, I think there was this misconception that as women, to feel more powerful, it was, you don't show emotion and you kind of hide you behind this more masculine facade, and you can't be broken, and, you get up and dust off, and but now I feel like that for me has entirely changed. I feel like being more powerful as a woman is really stepping into that feminine, understanding what your attributes as a woman are, and leaning in more into that, as opposed to trying to embody or resemble an energy that is more of a masculine one. And that's not to say we don't have both, because it's a yin and a yang, both males and females. It's more of that energy. I'm not talking about the physique itself. But I think that now, as a woman, hearing things like, oh, you would approach things maybe on a more holistic way, or
Yeah.
you kind of work with, I don't know, changes that are happening in your body, and maybe this week you're not in the best frame of
Yeah.
mind to make decisions, instead of seeing all these things as a weakness in the past and you just
Yeah.
need to kind of step up and get it done, where now I'm like, no, it's fine, and
Yeah.
I'm a woman, it's like
Exactly. I agree. I think that for me, my biggest sort of pivot came, or I pivoted, the biggest growth came when I accepted that I'm a woman and there are challenges that come with being
Yeah.
a woman, right? We're conditioned from a very young age
Yes.
to be a certain way, to be agreeable, to
Yeah.
not be crazy, to not be too loud, to not have like strong opinions. But then, when you're like sort of growing up with that pressure of society, you kind of become someone that you're not.
Yeah.
And this whole hyper independence, like I was just like, and I went through it because I went through a divorce, and I was
Yeah.
like, I cannot rely on anyone. I need to take care of my own emotions. I need to do all these things by myself. I isolated myself, and I became someone that I didn't even recognize, So the biggest growth for me was, okay, these are my challenges, and how do I work better with them,
Yeah.
rather than trying to fight them, And I think when you have when you have more energy, because I feel like a lot of energy is spent on like trying to fight those challenges,
Yeah.
So when you're not fighting those challenges, you're like, okay, cool, I can actually move on with life,
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's everything that you said, plus it's also really understanding that there's a place and a time. Like, I think for me, it's, like I mentioned earlier, I don't think that I always, in my mind, embody all this like feminine, girly girl energy. Not, please scrap girly girl, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It also is a place where, and time where I feel like, no, if I need to kind of step up in a different way and read the room in a different way, where I need to embody all these things that we did have, where you need to kind of act more like that masculine energy because you're dealing with a room full of guys, for example. It's different. The way you speak is different. You can't come in a certain way not because of you not understanding, but it's more reading the room and really playing with what mirror you're gonna showcase with who you're kind of speaking to or engaging with.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me, like, as someone from the Middle Eastern culture, how has your culture and your heritage like sort of developed your voice as a woman, and like how do you show up in the world belonging to that culture?
I think I would come to my answer from a more privileged point of view when answering this question, because I was lucky enough to be brought up in a household where from the very get-go there was no real differentiation with the things that mattered between my brothers and myself and my sisters. It was like when it came to education or how we were disciplined or how we were treated, it was pretty much on like the majority of things quite similar. So there was always that kind of level of equality in the sense that I felt I could voice certain things. My father as well, he respects women that are able to kind of speak for themselves and advocate for themselves in a way where it's okay, like you're a strong woman, that's it. So I think having that, and from that understanding when I was younger as well, I was given a way of independence as well in how I was able to, for example, before it was, I would say, allowed in some way where it's like, okay, traveling on your own and traveling with friends and being more liberal, not necessarily having to cover things like that, where it was giving more free will. And I think that in the nuclear household that I was brought up in helped me carry that forward in other aspects of my life, where I felt that because I had that at home, I was able to bring it into school or into university or into my first jobs and career and all of that, because I had the foundation there. I think it's not always easy when here it's understandable because as well, and we are in a culture, especially here in the UAE, where you have that, like women are given a certain level of support and they're backed up by society and given certain opportunities. It was more actually from the Western angle, where it's like, oh, so but you don't, you're able to blah blah blah, or you're allowed to yada yada.
They typecast us.
And I'm just like,
wow. Why?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, and you can easily reverse that, but you don't. So you can easily turn around and say like, oh, so you don't do X, Y, Z, or you're not in a farm milking a cow, you know,
exactly.
like vice versa to them.
Yeah.
But it's just, actually just grow with it. And then I think we're in a very interesting time nowadays in, I think, the past decade, where we see more of that in the MENA region, where there really is an insurgence of women really taking their voice in society. I would say.
Absolutely. And I think even like, you know, Saudi, which is like such a big country and such a big part of the MENA region, it opening up, you know, driving for women and with all the things that they're doing in that country, I think it's like the region's becoming a little bit more open. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, the issues, or not the issues, but the sort of typecast, like the boxes that they put us in, like, you know, the Western world is taking us out of them now because of all the processes that are going on in these countries.
But I think it was placed by the Western world to begin with, because I don't think that being an Arab, Middle Eastern woman, or even Eastern in general, I hate using the word Middle East because I feel like for now it's in relation to Europe. But no, historically, women did, like if you go back hundreds of years ago, and historically there were women who ruled. There was a lot of matriarchs in society and in the communities. So I think that was then lost. When it was being boxed in different ways, where it was trying to box us into cultures that did not belong to us. And there was these things that were lost in translation. I think now it's coming back full circle.
I think has been a lot of stuff that's been lost in translation, especially when it comes to our religion, because I feel like a lot of things, you know, restrictions that, you know, the Western world will call us, it's there to protect us, or it's there to empower women, you know, in a different way. But they see it as, oh my God, you guys are so restricted. And it's like, well, actually, are we? You know, like we're doing well with those restrictions. We're getting the respect and sort of the empowerment that we deserve, but just in a different way. So I think that when something is different, people like to
label it.
Exactly. So, you know, that's interesting you said about like your childhood and the way you were raised. I think that, you know, very few women in our society, like the Arab culture or the Pakistani culture or whatever, we're very blessed to have very similar households where we were raised by, you know, a father that was very understanding of us, and he raised us in a very strong way. And you know, I have a friend who's actually Indian who was raised in a very similar way. And one of the things that her father said to her that really resonated with me was, you know, I've raised you to be a strong, independent woman, and a lot of men cannot handle that. So your pool has automatically become smaller. Now, that doesn't mean that those men don't exist. It's just that the pool is smaller. So, you know, like for us, you know, we're in our 30s and we're single. We feel like, wait, like, is there something wrong with us? Or is there, you know, those men, do they not exist? And I have to remind myself that the pool is smaller, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You just have to look in a very specific direction, you know. But I think that our fathers, you know, did raise us to be those women that do require the smaller pools, which I feel like there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. And I think it's also why, like if you go back and you say like, why are the pools smaller? And I think when it comes to, for example, in our generation, as you mentioned, like we're in our 30s, it was always pretty much understood men would go to school, go to university, fall into the footsteps of, if they had a family set up, family business, they would step into that. And it was just kind of like their entire life planned ahead of them. So there was little need to kind of prove otherwise in some way, whereas it was that generation where really it kind of moved into more women and more girls going into higher education and then not marrying as young and starting to build a career. And so that leveled up. So when it came to, okay, you were training for a marathon and they just were kind of,
but they were okay with the 10 kilometers.
Exactly. So it's so I think in that sense it kind of created that gap where not to say that it was problematic, but that's where you started to see the differences where I guess people are talking about nowadays and complaining about nowadays, if it's a complaint, in that there is this difference in, okay, where women are being perceived to be a lot more independent versus the men of that same generation who have kind of not changed as much.
I think the future generation, I think even in our generation, I see this wave coming where people are getting more self-aware, they're working on themselves, they're aware of their traumas and how to work on it, but it's taking some time. But that's why you see in our generation, I think our generation is probably the generation that has the most divorces and people that are the most single at this point in time. And I think it's because people don't want to settle. They don't want to settle until they find that right partnership. And I think that's beautiful, to be honest, in my opinion.
I mean, I can't necessarily obviously offer a blanket statement because I think when it comes to relationships and marriages and all of that, like it's such a personal choice and or reason as to why people walk into things. And when you're younger, for people who did get married younger, like if I were to look at myself and think of who I was when I was 20 or 21, I would have been a recipe for disaster, back then thinking. And the thing is, back then you think you know it all and you think that you have all the answers. And it's not wrong, I think, to kind of step into life with a little bit of a sense of naivety in that. But I think what's very important is not to say that, oh, you're not going to change from who you were when you were 20 and 21 and who you are when you're like 30s going into 40s. It's that understanding of, hopefully, if you're lucky enough that you find a partner that can grow with you instead of growing apart, because change is inevitable. You're going to change after the first child, second child, third child. It's continuous. And so I think that when people, hopefully, like when they do decide to do it later, it's because it's more of an informed decision, not just because they were kind of, they were trying to take a box.
Well,
exactly. Take a box or like serial dating and before they decided that, okay, now we'll settle down. So,
exactly. Tell me, how do you show up authentically in life and what do you do to protect that authenticity?
I feel like I don't know any other way to kind of show up. So it's very much, for me, it's reading the room and really going by how I feel as well. So, and depending on who I'm interacting with in that moment, and meeting them to that level. So that, and then if it's something where you're building a relationship, even like we met, like if we were to use ourselves as an example, like we met like about 2 years ago or something, but we had such a great encounter that we, it was very authentic, like conversations were flowing, but so I would feel that, okay, there is that understanding, there's like a connection that's been built. So you kind of have that with different people that you're encountering. You'll understand what kind of connection you have with that person. And knowing how much to give and take, and like it's a tug of war.
Absolutely.
It's like a pull and push, and how I protect that is pretty much that. So if it is someone that is bringing in to the same level, then you don't feel as depleted. But then or you don't feel the need to kind of put certain levels of boundaries. But if you feel that it is something where you kind of need to draw that imaginary line for yourself, then you do that accordingly. And I think it's just building that confidence and really knowing how to navigate relationships as you grow
Yeah.
with age.
Absolutely. I think that for me, it's the same where, when I vibe with someone or when I'm like, okay, this person seems familiar, like I've met them before, but I haven't. I'm like, okay, I wanna like, harbor this like relationship. I wanna feed this relationship. And I do tend to gravitate towards those people. But then you have all sorts of people that you have to encounter for work. And in life. And they might not be your people, but that doesn't mean that you cannot show up authentically with them. But you just kind of, like you said, read the room and you tweak it. But the people that you actually get along with, you keep them closer. Like that's your tribe. And I'm not opposed to people like meeting people at a later like stage. Like I'm like 39 now, and I'm like, oh, I still meet like people that I can be great friends with. They say that, oh, you can't meet people when you're older and it's harder to make friends. Actually, it's been easier for me to make friends because I've discovered who I am and what really resonates with me. So if I meet someone and I'm like, wow, this conversation's amazing, or like 2, 3, 4 times I'm like, okay, this person is a part of my tribe. It doesn't take me very long to bring them into my inner circle because I know who I am, and I know what resonates with me because I'm so sure of that. I know exactly that this is the type of friendship that I want to I want to feed
Invest
into.
in.
Exactly.
And I think it's also everything that you mentioned, in addition to really understanding where you want to, like you gave the example of having work relationships and people that are part of your tribe, but I think it's also understanding that you can have different types of relationships. So we can have for example, a great friendship through a connection of, I don't know, sports, for example. But then that doesn't mean that you will need to fill in that and tick all the boxes of being there as the ride or die or this or that. Or
exactly.
Like someone, you can have people that you bond with or create a connection with based on the circumstance and the environment that kind of brought you together.
Exactly.
And it doesn't need to serve in other aspects or not. It's just you take it at face value and that's okay.
I love that because I think that, when you're younger, you're trying to take them and you're trying to fit them in all the boxes of your life. And that's when it gets messed up. And I've definitely been guilty of that, where I meet someone and I'm like, yes, I'm going to bring you into my life and into my other friendships. And it's just like, but this person's not really fitting. But that doesn't mean we're not good together in that moment, in that circumstance. But that just doesn't mean that they have to, like you said, tick every box. So you're so right about that. And I think it comes with time.
Comes with time. Comes with wisdom.
A lot of wisdom. So tell me, what is your relationship with self-worth look like over the years?
I think for certain values, that there's certain parameters that probably every person has, and I think that's kind of always been there. But there's been, I would say in the recent years, a lot of like learning and unlearning, and that would have been in ages, for example, when you're a little bit more impressionable, and to the earlier part of the conversation, we're talking about how sometimes you adopt things that could be a societal understanding of who you're meant to be, or what you're meant to like and dislike, or it could be from friends or family, but intentional or unintentional. And then that leads you to kind of making decisions in your life, and you're like, oh, but why would I do that, or why did I do that? So being where I am today and looking back, I think for the most part there is quite a healthy relationship that I have with myself and my own self-worth. But what I've come to do is, like, for things that I've done or said or whatever it may have been in the past, is take it with like, oh, I can't believe I said that or did that, instead of like making it eat at me and big deal, and like it shakes me in a different way. And I think now, as you mentioned, when you kind of are more confident in who you are and what you are, then that automatically comes hand in hand, where you'll accept to be a part of a situation or a conversation or not, be dependent on whether that fits in with how you value yourself and whether that's worthy enough for you or not. And I think that's how you define your self-worth. It's more about how you would feel comfortable with yourself given a situation and how you react.
Yeah. So
to
like,
it.
let's say like you mess up,
Yeah.
right? How do you talk to yourself in that moment?
It depends on what type of mess up it is
Yeah.
and what kind of a mess up. Like, for the most part, I will take it with a more humorous approach because I am that person. Like,
Yeah.
I, till today, will be that person that will go, oops, after
Yeah.
the deed
Yeah.
is done, you
Yeah.
know? And I've come a long way. But again, it depends on the gravity of the situation. And even when it comes to work and business and being an entrepreneur and, leading with things, that it's being okay knowing that I don't have all the answers. I won't know 100% for sure whether things are always going to work out the way I want them to, or if the results are going to be in the way that I anticipated. But it's to be okay with yourself that, okay, what's the worst that could happen? As long as no one's dead, nothing's burnt.
Yeah, exactly. We're good.
We're good.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me, how big of a part does faith or spirituality play in your life, and what sort of lessons do you take from it?
Huge. I think now I have a better understanding that they kind of go hand in hand, but there is a difference between faith and spirituality, whereas when I was younger, it kind of felt intertwined, which I feel in some cases they are, but I took it as spirituality and faith was just faith.
Yeah.
And yes, I grew up in a household of faith. I am so grateful that I belong to the faith that we belong to. And in growing and coming from it from an approach of more understanding, where my spirituality has grown, it's actually helped enhance my faith. And really kind of make me understand, be like, oh, okay, that's why, as opposed to just taking it as a learning, for example. But I think that it's really helped ground me a lot of the times in situations where, you feel a sense of disparity or you're upset, and it's just, you have your human emotions. But then once you take a moment to just take in and just feel that sense of gratitude and really look at things from an outward perspective, it really helps in really taking life with a pinch of salt. I would say, because there's always ups and downs, there's always things that are kind of move you positively or negatively, but I think that's the only constant really that you have in life, for me at least. Like, having that relationship with God and having that relationship with religion is the I would say growing constant, that the more you give, the more you benefit.
You get.
And
absolutely.
I think that's the only type of relationship that I've seen, that like literally the more you give, the more you
because with humans, the more we give, we start taking people for granted. Whereas you're right, like the more we feed into the relationship that we have with God, the more we're getting, actually. And I always, the best way that I see, like, if I'm going through a calamity or whatever, I'm like, you know what, like there's something it's benefiting me. Either it's building my character, or it's priming me for something even better. Like, I don't think of it as like, oh my God, my life is over. You know what I mean? Because I think like hardships or calamities are put into your life for a reason. And once you start knowing that the meaning of life is to go through stuff and build character and build yourself to be stronger. And why do we build ourselves to be stronger? So that we can receive something even bigger than what we thought. Because if we were like a small vessel and we got a lot, we wouldn't be able to receive it. So when we're expanding the vessel, we're actually building for something even bigger.
100%. And I think in addition that once you also kind of understand that there's growth from that, like you don't grow when things are easy. You don't grow when things are like hunky-dory and smooth sailing, because there's no understanding of your character when things go rough or and I think aside from it also being a test to your character and understanding that you learn from trials and tribulations, aside from that, I think it's this understanding of you really can't hold on to anything in life. Like, fun times will be fun times, but then before, like, good times will be good while they last, and then so nothing's ever constant. Like everything's ever changing in the sense that bad times will turn into good times and vice versa. So it's this constant understanding that you can't be too attached to anything. Like you can't be too attached to people, to tangible objects or anything in general, because everything is ever flowing, ever changing, including yourself.
Exactly.
So I think that comes with understanding of like what we were talking about as well, and
I think as business women, we know that like you need to keep flowing and you need to keep pivoting. Like, you know, there's been so many times, and I'm sure in your business as well, where I'm like, okay, I need to pivot now. Like I need to change. I need to change something about myself. I need to change something about my business to get to the next level. You know, so we can't be so fixated on, no, this is how it should be, or this is how, you know, I imagined something. You can't be like that, because then you're bound to fail, because everything, like you said, is ever changing, you know? Okay, tell me, what is some advice that you would give to your younger self about failure and just about life in general?
About failure, I think I would say to not be fearful of it. I think as kids, or at least with me, there was this constant pressure that you can't do wrong. Like you had to bring the A's at school. Like you had to do your best, which is not a bad thing, because there's a lot of discipline taught in that. But it's only now as you grow old, where I am today, I would say not even a few years ago, where this concept of if you didn't do well meant that you're just not good, which is so far from the truth. Not doing well in something or failing in something just allows you to come at it from a different angle.
Exactly.
Maybe, you know, with better skill sets, or maybe figure out that that's not for you entirely and find yourself. So I think there's a lot to be learned from failure and having it from a young age, but ensuring that you're okay with, kind with yourself when you fail, that it's a lesson. Everything's a learning lesson. And I think the best way to kind of do that is involve yourself in sports. I would say, like, as a child, if you're involved in sports and something that was a little bit more competitive, not competitive towards others, but will build in that self-competition, like that self-competitiveness, I think it's a very good thing to have, because it allows for you to, okay, I didn't do well, but tomorrow I'm going to do better. And I fell off the horse. Tomorrow I'm going to get back on. Or right now I'm going to get back on. I'm going to give my all. So it kind of, you have that drive or that fire because you didn't do well and because you failed.
Exactly. And I think that, you know, when you fail at something, you're actually closer to success, because you know that this way didn't work. So then you're like, okay, maybe another way could work. So you know what way didn't work. So you already know, like you're in the know-how, you know? So I do feel like I used to be really like scared of failure, whether it be a relationship or something to do with work or anything. And I'm just like, okay, now I look at it as that's such a learning curve for me, because I know this doesn't work. So then this might work, you know? So I think that's one thing that I've, you know. Okay, so how do you define success when no one is watching?
Being content with where I am.
Yeah, I love that.
I think because at the end of the day, I live through my day, and I'm the one who goes through the notions and the emotions of my day. And I think that once you're okay and you're not too concerned about what the other person is doing in their lane, or what the optics would look like, then I think that's what success is, I think, for me.
I agree. And how would you like to see the future of clean beauty?
It's an interesting conversation because, again, going back to the term and the label like clean beauty, there's a lot of conversation and use it. There's a lot of greenwashing. And I think it's because of the industry as well, not kind of regulating what would be considered clean as a general consensus. And it's down to brands taking that opportunity.
And it's funny, it's the bigger brands that kind of dictate what clean should be. But actually, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not the clean ones.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think the way I would just take it is how I see it for myself is that, or what the future is, where we're seeing is that there's such advanced technology as well nowadays in terms of how to extract actives and what goes into products and formulations, and the data and the science is progressing a lot. But it brings me to then the point where, because that's all happening, then what's the excuse to still have things that we know shouldn't be in skincare and in beauty products altogether? So I think that it will be a positive direction and growth. And I think the more people kind of understand that beauty is not in isolation to everything else that you do in your day-to-day. So if you're eating healthy and clean and you're watching what you're putting in your body, then it's only natural that you would want the same to put on your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially when people understand that there are disruptors that happen to you because of products, because of ingredients that are in products. And I think when it comes from both ends, that consumers being a lot more educated and aware, and companies then imposing, include maybe governments actually imposing a little bit more restrictions on advocating for what goes into beauty and products and ingredients, then it would be a more impactful future, I would say.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
Alia.
you for having us, having me.
Yeah. You know, I always say us as well because it's a business term.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I always refer to me and my team.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you like, what are you talking about?
Like me and that, all my other personalities.
Exactly. I mean, that too. Yeah. For me, it's definitely my other personalities.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And honestly, you are an inspiration.
Thank you.
You know, for me especially, and I know for Saba as well.
Thanks,
you know,
you guys.
the quiet confidence that you have, I think it's definitely that's why I wanted you on here as well. It's something that I definitely want to advocate for and spread in the world. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. And this was great.